right, good morning. Good morning. Is everybody excited? I hear like nobody. Is everybody excited? Okay, that's better. My name's Nihal. I think we're going to talk about mobile today. Maybe. Yep. Maybe mobile. Why don't you guys introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Greene. I'm principal at Lerer Hippeau Ventures. Lerer Hippeau Ventures is a seed stage venture fund. We are based here in New York, but not only are we based here, we focus most of our investments on the New York area. So about 70% of our portfolio is here in New York. We're investing out of a $62 million fund. Our average check size is about 500K, so we'll lead. We'll also follow as part of a syndicate. And then in terms of what we invest in primarily three different areas. One is mobile and consumer. We also invest a lot in commerce, the direct-to-consumer commerce businesses. And then we've also started investing a lot in B2B SaaS businesses.
And I'm Matt Witheiler. I'm with Flybridge. We're an early stage venture fund based here in New York as well as in Boston. We do early stage technology investing. We tend to be more on the enterprise side of the house, specifically enterprise software. Although our mandate is relatively broad, we do a lot of technology speaking or technology broadly defined investing. And from a check size perspective, we do seed and Series A. So initial checks of $250,000 up to $6 or $7 million, and $10 to $12 million through life of the company. So we keep investing as the companies grow. So that is the quick on me. And we invest in mobile.
So we're here to talk about mobile. Who here has a mobile phone? Raise your hand. Wow, that's amazing.
Who has a flip phone, a feature phone?
Who has a phablet or an iPhone 6 Plus? That's great. So I had this 2 years ago. Everybody thought I was crazy, and now Apple finally caught up to me. But do you guys like the 6 Plus or no? No? You hate it? Doesn't fit in your pocket? Okay. So we're going to talk about what's happening in mobile, kind of trends that you guys are seeing. So pick it up.
Sure. So just a couple trends that we're seeing. One thing that I didn't mention is that we also invest a lot in content. So two of the co-founders at the fund founded the Huffington Post, and one's also a co-founder of BuzzFeed. So one thing that we're super excited about is that mobile is really giving more people more time to spend connecting with content sites. So, whether you're in line, waiting for a cup of coffee, or you're on the subway, people are engaging more and more with their mobile phones than they were with desktop. So, and then to be more specific, younger folks are engaging more and more with their phones. So if you're over 35, on average, you spend about 3 hours a day just strictly on your mobile phone. If you're between 18 and 35, you spend more like 5 hours a day. So that's more time to start, more time to consume content. So we're super excited about that. And then also the mobile format lends itself actually much more to sharing content when you're on your phone. So if you're reading an article on your phone, you're 2 times more likely to share it with someone else. So we're very focused on social and the virality of articles. So because of the format and how easy it is to share something, whether it be through Facebook, Twitter, or other social channels, or just emailing it to somebody you think that might enjoy the article, we're seeing 2x more shareability across mobile. So that's kind of one of the trends. The other trend that we're noticing is, so we focus a lot on looking at consumer applications and how they can translate into the enterprise. So one dating application that a lot of people are using is called Tinder, and it's got this card swipe functionality where you can kind of like move left or right based on.
I think everybody in this room knows what Tinder is.
Can we explain it a little bit more? I'm not sure.
Raise your hand if you're not on Tinder.
You never know. You never know. I'm not on Tinder. But
no, I saw your profile yesterday. I swiped left.
So, anyways, if you haven't used this very easy card swiping ability just to move left or right, yes or no, basically. And we're looking at a lot of companies that are applying that to be it, real estate. So you're looking for a new apartment, and go left or right based on stuff that you like, and it actually just makes it very, very easy for consumers to engage just on the mobile phone. So that could be real estate, that could be jobs. We made an investment in a company called Jobber, which is sort of Tinder for jobs, where it allows you to very quickly decide if you think the job is right for you or not. And that's all because of how easy it is to do that by swiping just on the mobile phone.
We're in Jobber as well. Yeah, it's a great company.
We're not in Jobber.
You're not in Jobber.
Sorry. So at Flybridge, we actually don't believe in mobile. No, I'm just kidding. At Flybridge, we see mobile influencing a lot of our companies, but let me spend a minute talking about a specific trend that we have spent time in and are excited about, specifically with relation to mobile. And that is the tools and resources that developers need to build applications and services for mobile in a different way than they have to do for the desktop. So the way we think about it, at least, is there was a whole ecosystem of tools and products that were focused on developers that were really tailored for the desktop world. And we're seeing some of those tools migrate and opportunities be created for the mobile world. One specific example in our portfolio is a company called Crashlytics that we invested in. Crashlytics is a API for developers to get better data from crash reports on Android and iOS devices. And the company started realizing that on Android and iOS, there was a market opportunity for, as a developer, when something crashed, you'd get a very generic report from Google or from Apple, who had not spent much time developing tools for developers with respect to crashes. And the opportunity was, can we get some traction and solve this pain point for developers? So we invested in the company, and the company got amazing traction. I think by the time that we sold the company to Twitter about a year ago, they were on something like 1 billion phones. So 1 billion mobile devices had a Crashlytics API touching it at some point, because they did integrations with companies like Twitter and Square and Foursquare and eBay, and you name all the big companies that are developing for mobile apps. And so that was a great investment for us. And as we think about the developing ecosystem for developers for mobile specifically, we think there's more opportunity. Another area that is of interest to us is kind of this whole SDK area. So if I'm a mobile app developer and I have to plug in a bunch of SDKs into my mobile app, it's a pain to update them and to maintain them and to constantly be refreshing every time that Twitter or one of the SDKs that I'm integrating changes. And we think there's opportunity around unifying that and providing better tools to developers for things like push notification and SDK management and that sort of thing. So we take maybe a slightly different view, but we think of ourselves as being the investors behind a lot of the picks and shovels that are generating a lot of the, or leveraging a lot of the traction of companies that Taylor talked about, like BuzzFeed.
Yep. I think with any emerging kind of space, obviously picks and shovels are a great investment area. Taylor, talk about maybe one of your content properties that you've seen like dramatically shifting to mobile.
Well, I talked a little bit about BuzzFeed. So BuzzFeed, I think these numbers are published. I think it's over 50% of their traffic now is from mobile, and so that's not surprising. I'm actually expecting that to go way up in the next few years. But pretty much all of our content properties are seeing huge spikes in mobile, just from what I was saying earlier, where more and more folks you're just in front of your phone more than you're in front of your computer. So everybody there's another company that we recently invested in called Mic.com, used to be called Policy Mic. It focuses on that 18 to 34-year-old demo that I was talking about. Started off more around politics, and then it's kind of expanded into arts and culture and other things. But they have a mobile-first strategy, and from the get-go, they didn't start with 20% mobile. They started, with a huge percentage of of mobile. So I mean it's obvious. It's the phones are in our pocket. They're with us all the time, and so it's how we're consuming our content now. So it's just something that's kind of going like this from your perspective.
Can I maybe add a point, which is,
I didn't.
is that okay?
I mean, I'm the moderator. So.
All right, I defer to the moderator.
Okay, you can
Thank you.
add a point.
I think Taylor's point's exactly right in that mobile is, I don't care if it's an enterprise software company or a content company, like mobile is critically important and is growing at a very fast rate. I think the observation that we make is that mobile has to be part of any one of our investment opportunities, kind of the strategy as far as plan going forward. So anybody who comes in and pitches us, even if they're creating an enterprise database company, has to understand how it potentially could be useful or applicable to the mobile world. And maybe I'll use another one of our portfolio companies called Firebase that we invested in that was acquired by Google last month. And Firebase is a back-end as a service company, but they found at the very beginning kind of recognized this opportunity for a new class of developers who were creating real-time backends for mobile devices. And so the ability to play multi-player games or interact with content across multi-devices was a behavior that they were seeing take off a lot in mobile, and therefore built the tool specifically to be useful for mobile developers as well as desktop developers. And so they got a lot of traction in the mobile world. And it's an example of how even an enterprise database company took mobile and recognized that there was a huge investment opportunity with respect to what was going on. So mobile has to be, I think, an important strategy for any one of the entrepreneurs in the room, whether you're creating a content site or a developer-focused tool.
Awesome. So I know at ENIAC, what we look at is often some white spaces in mobile that don't exist but have existed and have done really well on the desktop. And do you guys see that and make your investment decisions in mobile around those kind of greenfield opportunities that you have a gut that needs to happen, or how does it work?
For sure. I mean, one thing that we're looking a lot at, which I mentioned earlier, was as consumer technology, more particularly mobile technology, kind of invades the enterprise. We're looking at a lot of different verticals that haven't yet been disrupted by consumer-like apps, but within the enterprise. So we're looking a lot at healthcare. We're looking a lot at real estate. We're looking a lot at fintech. And so, one example of a company that we invested in recently that's actually in the healthcare space is a company called Doctor on Demand, which is effectively video conferencing with a doctor. So you push a button, and you're connected with a doctor who's within your state, who, if they see you, they can actually prescribe in the majority of the states. They can prescribe you medicine just from seeing you over kind of like over video messaging. So we're looking a lot at different verticals that haven't yet been made better by mobile. Another white space that we noticed somewhat recently is that it seems that most people, if you think about the apps that you have on your phone, for the most part, you're probably not engaging on a weekly basis with more than 20 of them. So it's very, very difficult to become one of those 20, and it's even more difficult to become one of those habit-forming apps that people are checking, more than twice a day. So for everybody else, it's very important to have this mobile strategy, as Matt was mentioning. You need to have some sort of mobile presence. Your website needs to be mobile friendly at the basic level. But we just made an investment about a year ago in a company called Wildcard, which is the world's first card-based browser. So I was talking a little bit about cards earlier, but right now the websites that were made for the old web, and they're not necessarily made for the mobile phone, and so it takes a long time to load up Safari and load up a lot of websites. Whereas if you use the Wildcard browser, they've already ingested a lot of the relevant content. And as a result, it's loading on a card and giving you the relevant information, whether that's a sports score or or a snippet of an article. But it's all about kind of making the user experience better. And we noticed a huge white space and a gap around around the mobile browser and just how long it takes to load some of the content that's rich with photos. It takes way too long to load on the mobile phone.
Yeah, I think that I think Taylor's point is exactly the right one. I think, as Nihal said, the white space in mobile is somewhat clear when you look at the tools and services developed in the desktop world and think about how mobile will change them. And so specifically speaking, when you think about things like, I don't know, Salesforce, for instance, Salesforce has a really terrible mobile experience. I don't know if anybody's used Salesforce on their phone, but it's a terrible mobile experience. And so is there an opportunity, and Salesforce was built and developed in the world where the desktop was the primary interface device for salespeople, and the cloud was just coming into being, so you could have hosted services. And so is there an opportunity to disrupt some of the last generation companies that are 100% desktop focused and build a totally ground up new experience for mobile? And so I think the answer to that is yes. Like, a lot of these businesses are going to be disrupted, and it'll play out in one of two ways, I think. On one hand, you'll see the Salesforces of the world acquire to try to change their product and change their development path to be more mobile focused. But at the same time, I think there'll be some companies that are startups that break out and can actually overtake the incumbent because of how painful some of the experiences are when you look at it from your phone. So even if it's an entrenched behavior, whether it's CRM or expense reporting or any of these things, there's a huge opportunity to build new companies and disrupt the legacy players who are primarily desktop and browser-based.
Matt, what's one mobile startup that you missed, that you wish you invested in?
It's a good question.
We did absolutely no prep for this panel, by the way. So these are like on the spot fastballs.
Yeah, which is more fun. So let's see. So I would use Uber. We didn't technically see Uber for their seed round. So, but let me. I'll tell you why we would have. Like we talk about this internally. Yeah, a lot of people. If we saw it, I think we would have passed, and I'll tell you why. We would have looked at Uber, and I think we would have worried that they're replacing the black car industry, and the black car industry is a shitty industry. And that's probably would have been our conclusion 5 years ago. And that's totally the wrong thinking. And so as a result, we look back and say, wait a minute, things like Uber are not about disrupting existing markets, they're about creating new markets. And so what could Uber have been? Sure, practically they were a black car replacement, but more realistically speaking, or kind of dreaming, they're a replacement for all forms of transportation. And so I think maybe that's although it's not one we saw, that would have been the reason that we would have probably passed, and it obviously was the wrong call. So we've taken a lot of that thinking and tried to integrate it into our decision-making process to make sure that we're looking for not what something is today, but what something will be in 5 years. What do you guys pass?
I wasn't at the fund then, so I don't.
Nice cover your ass.
So I don't.
He was my partner.
Not. It's so obvious in retrospect, but it's when you're looking at to Matt's point. I mean, there's so many factors that you consider, but that one was an obvious pass. One that probably my biggest pass. So I've been doing this for only about a year, so I don't have a ton under my belt, a ton of deals under my belt. But my biggest pass is a company called YikYak. So it's to be determined, but this one looks like. It looks like it's got sort of Snapchat style growth. It's growing asymmetrically. So it's basically turning into like a local news product based on what's going on around you. So I made the mistake of our office is down in Soho. We're sort of close to NYU, but not really. So this product first started taking off on college campuses. So at NYU, and you need a lot of engagement in the network. You need a lot of people in order for the content to be good enough, and the people voting on content to elevate the good stuff, so that you're not seeing just kind of like pedantic posts. And I didn't walk over to NYU. I didn't think of it to walk over to NYU to get the experience on campus there. I looked at what the experience was in Soho, and there weren't that many people in Soho using it. And so I just kind of missed it when I just thought, oh, why don't I go onto the NYU's campus and see what the experience is like there? I would have gotten it instantly. Whereas now, I check it in Soho, and it actually is relatively, sometimes funny, sometimes gross. But a lot of these apps start off gross and end up really engaging.
Yeah, I think anything that's gross is usually a good investment, right?
Well,
Generally.
I guess my point on that is sometimes it's the investments that we argue about the most that we're that one partner is firmly against and one partner is firmly for. Those turn out to be the most interesting ones. So you never know. It's not always the unanimous, obvious yeses.
I didn't pass on over. So. You guys are jerks. We saw Pinterest early 2009, and actually Hadley passed on it, my partner, and we give him shit all the time. But it wasn't mobile at that time, so we're mobile investors. But we printed out the email that he passed on Pinterest in the office because at the bottom of the email he's like, wishing you all the best, comma, Hadley. And yeah, obviously they've done pretty well. So I think that's time. We could be talking for hours, but thanks guys. This was fun.
Thanks everybody.